So next up is David Colarusso from Suffolk University.
Howdy, my name is David Colarusso. I'm the director of the Legal Innovation and Technology Lab at Suffolk Law School. We basically act as a small consultancy inside the law school doing data science and tech projects for nonprofits, courts, etc. This slide deck is based mostly on, partially on work I did with Erica Rickard, who's somewhere in the audience. So thank you, Erica. Woo! If there has ever been an argument about one or two spaces post-punctuation that has led to a fist fight, you can bet an attorney was the first one to throw a punch. Form matters, in part because it shouldn't matter. Deciphering what someone means is a tax on an argument that we've tried to get rid of in our profession. Now, if you were to move over to the courts and say that every brief had to be typed on an Underwood typewriter, that would be silly, but we effectively do that digitally all the time. Content is what matters, not the container. Now, despite your experiences with Macs or PCs or Word and WordPerfect, you do not have to buy tools from the same vendor in order for everything to play nice together. And we know this in everyday life because, again, it's the assumptions about what we mean that are what drive our understanding. So consider, for example, earlier this year, members of the foreign press were turned away from the White House because on their background check, they put their date of births down as day, month, year, as opposed to month, day, year. That's an ambiguity that doesn't have to exist. It's what happens when there's a breakdown of the understanding of what the format should be. We know we can talk across platforms because you can visit the same website on your PC or on your Mac or on your phone, because HTML is an open standard that everyone agrees upon what it means. So we say this is what a link looks like, and we know what a link is. Now, law enforcement and courts have adopted data standards, especially post 9/11, as first responders have been asked to talk to each other. And so in Massachusetts, where I'm from, you can actually file an electronic criminal complaint with the court. The police department will do that. And then what will they do? They'll print out that complaint and hand it to the DA and hand it to the public defender. They'll go back to their office. They'll type it back up, put it into their system. That's horribly inefficient. You could get around that if you had standards that allowed all the different systems to talk to each other. And you can start to do really interesting things once you have a standard format for communicating, a language that everyone can use. I can't believe I'm ahead of my slide. There we go. I love this image from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, especially that small part down on the left that says the weight of these lines does not represent caseloads. This is a map of cases moving through there. Wouldn't it be great if it did? Right? If you had open standards, you could compare apples to apples because everyone would be reporting about the same thing. That's the sort of world standards makes possible. You can unlock information that currently is held up in paper. Imagine unlocking the monopoly on primary texts. If people could go in and just find information, know what it means, imagine all the cool startups and fun things that would happen. Of course, that brings us to big data and the law. This slide is just laughter, so I'll just wait. Okay, so with big data, you can actually start to ask questions. Is there a disparate impact when you do this as do that process? And because the information is available, you can figure out what it's saying. Now, in Massachusetts, we have an electronic court docketing system that has been dubbed the Big Dig of Big Data by one of our local papers. I got the pleasure of sitting on the External Advisory Committee, where we all got around a bunch of different stakeholders, and the court said, we're going to build you all these cool things to access the data. We're going to build a little portal for you, DOC, and for you, the public defenders, and for the DAs. We'll build these bespoke portals for everyone. That was 2 years ago. We haven't had another meeting. So there's a better way to do this. So actually, when the court had a notice and comment period for some proposed rules changes, my old employer, the public defenders, and my new employer, Suffolk Law School, along with a whole bunch of other people, said there's a better way. Don't build something for everyone. Decide on a set of standards, how you're going to represent the information, and then make that information available only to the people that you want to make it available to. And there's actually some precedent for this. A few years back, the Department of Transportation in Massachusetts wanted to put these signs up at every bus stop right? Telling you when the next bus is going to arrive, just like they had at some of the train stations. It was this great idea. It was going to cost loads of money and take years to do. They said, what can we do right now? And they said, well, what? We're already tracking our fleet. We know where people are. So they took an open standard that was being used for bus schedules, added a couple columns to say where things are right now, and now you have an app on your phone that consumes that standardized data to tell you where the next bus is or where the next train is. So that's one of the things that are possible when you have open standards. Now, it's important that you don't conflate open standards and open data. Okay, so they're not the same thing. They're very often spoken about in the same sentence. Open standards just says you know what the format is for the information you're holding. Open data is making available the data. So just because you go to a website, which uses an open standard HTML, doesn't mean people can read what's on the website. So you still trust going to your bank's website. Unless, well, this is where I make a joke at a certain bank, but I won't. And this is important. You want to be careful about who sees what, because you want to avoid a world where landlords can blackball tenants who have had previous actions with other landlords. You want to be very careful how you think about that. So what are we doing at the lab to help make this wonderful standards future happen? Well, we have a project that we're working with a court system and a Department of Corrections. Right now they pass a bunch of paper back and forth. It's error-prone, mistakes get made, it's time-consuming. We're helping them agree upon a set of standards, stand up a web service, and then let the DOC just consume the data directly from the courts so that we can get rid of some of that error. And hopefully this will snowball and other people will be, oh, that's great. And hopefully that'll happen. This is where I make a joke about only having 20 seconds to take questions, but I've been told there might actually be questions later. So hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions. Also, the slide deck is available on our lab's website at suffolklitlab.github.io/talks. And of course, we'll put it up on the box for the conference. Thank you.